Welcome to the Corporate Treasury 101 podcast. This is the second section of our full interview with Aimee Cullen. Aimee is a seasoned Treasury professional and had numerous leading roles in corporate treasury departments, such as Johnson & Johnson, where she grew from business analyst to senior manager, capital markets and global cash analysis, or Car Trawler, where she was the head of treasury. She also is the president of the IACT, the Irish Association of Corporate Treasurers, and the thought leader in the treasury industry. In the episode of today, expect to learn what is a best-in-class Treasury Center, what are the cost implications of Treasury Centers, why is Ireland such an attractive location for companies to establish their Treasury Center, and much, much more. Aimee is amazing. She is full of insights, truly embodies her role as a leader, and the conversation is flowing. Hussam and I really enjoyed it, and we hope you will enjoy it as well. If that is the case, please leave us a review on your favorite podcast app. It helps the podcast a lot, only takes literally 2 seconds, and most importantly, makes Hussam and I very happy indeed. With all that being said, please welcome Aimee Cullen.
We've mentioned it a few times, and I think we can't wait to talk about its Treasury Centers in Ireland. And maybe to begin with, Aimee, how would you define a best-in-class Treasury Center?
Best-in-class Treasury Center, I think, the centralization, obviously the optimum, as I mentioned, is the in-house bank. So if you can really service the affiliates across the globe, that is really, to me, would be best in class. I think if you have the automation, if you're centralizing your investments, if you have a way to identify and offset your currency exposures, so you're actually just trading whatever you need to trade, it's, that to me is really best in class.
Okay. And in terms of technology, what would you have exactly here? Like a fully optimized TMS connected throughout all the subsidiaries, as likewise for the payment hub, this kind of stuff?
Yeah, that's ideal. If you have the treasury management system, it's fantastic. We were discussing earlier, about treasury management systems and what you would look for. I think there is a trend towards the more modular treasury management system, which is great because you can actually then pick and choose what you need depending on your treasury, your size, what you do. I think that's great. And you do need somebody, though, to centrally decide what's the optimal. But I think in terms of plugging that in now, again, the advancement in technology and the system providers being more willing to be a bit more agile, you can plug into standalone cash forecasting models to dealing platforms. Most will go easily into an ERP without much need for development. And I think, as much as you can plug in, the better, because you're reducing operational risk. You're not as dependent necessarily on people. Straight through process, much better controlled. Even when it comes to foreign exchange deals or investments, if you can automate the confirmation back, it just gives that certainty, again, that you're seeing everything that you need to see, but then also you're helping out your bank rec team, your accountants, because again, if you can take from the bank statement and you can auto-populate an ERP, again, it takes away a lot of that manual work and people have more time to analyze or to think about things, rather than just building out models and posting.
And gets away from very manual tasks and more focus on the analysis and added value of treasury.
Exactly.
Super clear. So we talked earlier about the talent aspects and the preferred locations for treasury centers. Those doesn't sound like the cheapest, right? So are there any cost implications when it comes to treasury center? Because I guess the initial objective is to optimize treasury and so make it more efficient cost-wise and also provide more value into cash optimization, for instance, or like debt issuance and so on. So what are the aspects when it comes to cost efficiency into best-in-class treasury centers? What are you looking at?
I think the going in as a corporate treasury is a cost center. Right, so you're going to cost. You try and bring the efficiencies, as you mentioned, yes, with cash management, with the FX and reducing the number of transactions, reducing the number of bank accounts. not needing to go into the market to fund, that all helps. Then you try and add value, through that. How can I work with the business to get them to stand them up in a new market, give them that bank account infrastructure or currency exposure or currency support that they need. These are all the costs, but you see the added value of the governance and of the risk management and funding optimization. In terms of people, as much as you can centralize, it obviously helps you then in terms of the IT infrastructure that you put in place. And so maybe you don't need as many people as you would have. And it goes back to what we discussed on the shared service centers, that you would probably go to a different location if you feel you're going to be, require a large team. So yeah, I think in some ways we try and, reduce the number of bodies within Treasury if you can through systems, because it just makes it easier. And then Treasury is moving more towards an advisory type function.
So Aimee, sing us praise of Ireland specifically and everything that you've said. So tell us specifically why Ireland is a location which tends to attract these treasury centers so much.
Yeah, I'll try and focus my glowing the recommendations on Treasury. Like the example you gave of China, I think, God, it must be 30 years ago now. The IFSC was born in Ireland. So it was a dedicated financial services centre where a lot of companies were encouraged through tax incentives. And, we had that headline rate of 10%, encouraging people to do their financial dealings in Ireland. So you would put your intercompany lending here, you would fund globally through a centre in Dublin. And with that came the banks. Right, so they came to support the companies that decided to put their finance services centre in Ireland. Those ancillary pieces were established and they stayed. People became more educated. It was an industry that people wanted to go into. So the expertise is there. And even though the tax incentive is pretty much gone and will go away as we go towards tax harmonisation, the quality, I guess, of the talent available remains. Obviously, we are the only English-speaking country now in the EU post-Brexit, so that has a huge benefit, particularly if you're trying to bridge US, Europe and Asia. So it just makes it a little bit easier. Obviously, from a time zone perspective, it's easier within Ireland to capture more of the globe. So, you would go over Singapore, maybe 7-8 hours. LATAM could be between 2 and 5 hours, depending on which countries, if we're thinking about Brazil, obviously Colombia, Chile, Argentina, there'd be a bit of a difference there. But if you got your big financial centers in Brazil, it makes it a lot easier. And even west coast of the US is a little bit more palatable for people. You compare it to Singapore, and I had a lot of colleagues that would be taking calls at 6 a.m. and having final calls nearly around midnight, to try and stay in touch with their counterparties and with their subsidiaries. So they'd be some of the bigger concerns and reasons, I guess, to locate in Ireland. So the skilled workforce, time zone, language. We have the euro, obviously, which makes it a lot easier in terms of currency exposure for mainland Europe, but then also looking at whatever currency pairs and being liquid in terms of sterling and dollar. Banking framework, I think SEPA is obviously a big thing. So we can, look to make a lot cheaper payments, being based out of, or having your Treasury Center bank accounts in Ireland. What else would I say? I think even then from a common law perspective, so I think our legal framework is probably more conducive to business. Obviously the UK being such an important market for a lot of companies, it's on a par. So our legal framework would be similar. So I think just a lot around that. And again, just that ancillary service, we've got a lot of really good international law firms here, tax advisors, like the usual Big Four and accountancy bodies. So the structure is here to easily set up and do business in Ireland.
And lovely people, right? You mentioned legally into
but it goes, but it's not.
No, exactly. No, just listen. It seems like Ireland has always been like this, like the UK, the bridge between the UK and the EU or Europe, mainland Europe, let's say, in a lot of ways, and politically and geographically, it also serves that purpose in a lot of ways as well. So that's super interesting. But indeed, the time zone is something you never really think about. I think until you've worked for an international company where you've had to be based or work with people in completely opposite time zones, you don't really realize just how important that is to just smooth business.
Yeah.
And ease of business overall.
Yeah. And, like with Treasury, as it were a risk function, like if something goes wrong, you really need to be able to get people and, thinking about, okay, where would banks be open? So, for example, being based in Ireland, I can manage cash in the US and I can also manage it in Asia. And, I can consolidate it, I can invest it. So I can be a lot more efficient through the day in terms of what you need to do. But absolutely, as I said, colleagues in Singapore, I really felt for them, and the hours that they have to work. And it goes back, thinking about attracting talent, which is a problem across all industries at the moment. If you want to give people that work-life balance, you don't really want to have them up at dawn and then going to bed sort of, 18 hours later.
You mentioned the IFSC.
Yes.
Could you just touch on that a little bit more? What exactly is that? What do they do?
So it was the International Financial Services Center. That was its title, and it's in Dublin City Centre. So it was an area, I suppose, that was undeveloped along what would have been Dockland a couple of years ago. And it was really a government initiative together, supported with the IDA, which is the Development Authority, responsible for bringing in foreign direct investment into Ireland, and still is, I suppose, in building those relationships and promoting Ireland as a place to do business. But within companies that were registered in that region, so within this particular Docklands area, would be able to avail of a 10% tax rate. So that really, it was all about regenerating the area and bringing employment and, putting Ireland on the map. So obviously a lot of international companies decided to set up there. When I left college, I actually joined the ABN AMRO IFSC. So that was responsible for managing the outsourced treasury services for a lot of international companies. And it was a very easy add-on. So if the bank had a relationship in the US with a US multinational, it was very easy for them to say, okay, if you want to move your intercompany netting, so the process for paying your intercompany invoices, move it to this IFSC company, they'll be able to do that for you on an outsourced basis. And then that company could avail of a 10% tax rate. So it would be a spin-off of those US companies managed by, Citibank had theirs, Bank of America, JP Morgan, a lot of the bigger banks had this IFSC model.
Maybe linking to this organism, does Ireland enable those best-in-class type of treasury centers that we mentioned earlier? Is it proper for that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think again it goes down to the experience and the quality of talent, but also the fact that the IFSC is such an established structure and well known. It also has attracted a lot of funds. So a lot of funds are Irish registered. I think predominantly in Europe, it would be Ireland or maybe Luxembourg as where hedge funds would be registered because of that expertise that has been accumulated. So a lot of people will come to Ireland with their financial services requirements because of the talent, because of the infrastructure. I mentioned we have all of our legal supports. You've got a lot of tax companies based here, and a lot of the banks are headquartered here. So we've got all of the big players, would again not necessarily be within that remit of the IFSC now, but certainly if you go along the Livy in Ireland, you'll see a lot of the big global banks have, a very large presence in Ireland to support. With Brexit, obviously, that we got a few new joiners, but what you need in terms of supporting your treasury and supporting the financial piece of your business is available in Ireland.